When I think back to one of the main reasons for not trying yoga, I have to be honest, it was that it didn't seem like it was designed for men. Yoga is often perceived as this female dominated space, and in many ways it is. But if you think yoga is going to make you soft or weak or less of a dude, you're missing the point entirely. I found my way into yoga about 22 years ago, and for a long time before things started to shift, I was probably the only man in the room. And yet, what I didn't expect was that in that time and in that space full of women, I've learned more about being a man than at any other point in my life, which may sound like a paradox because yoga often gets associated with many of the softer traits, with flexibility, with movement, with ease, with grace, whereas masculinity often gets associated with the opposite, with strength and power and hardness and rigidity and toughness. And it would be easy to just kind of push back against that and tell you, well, yoga does make you strong too, and it's much harder than it looks. And although that's true, that's not actually what I learned. What I learned is that I was wrong about what masculinity means and what it looks like. And that realization came from many of the men who taught me in yoga and had shaped me as a teacher. So in this video, I want to share with you what I learned and how it rebuilt my idea of what it means to be a man. So let me take you back to the beginning. One of the first teachers that inspired me to pursue the path of yoga was a real fascinating dude. And what I appreciated about him most was that he had this pursuit of knowledge and this willingness to go seek it out. He traveled the world. He lived in India. He always brought back what he had seen and what he had done and what he had learned into the classroom. He actually took what he learned and he applied it to how he lived and shared a very unique perspective because of it, his perspective. And that stood out to me. It made me kind of desire the process of learning. And this is where I saw a big misperception in how I used to understand what it meant to be a man. Because often masculinity is associated with the answer, not the pursuit of it. Men feel this need to give guidance, to tell someone what to do, as opposed to actually seeking it out on their own or understanding. And I think this is largely because most men are afraid to make mistakes, are afraid of saying, I don't know. And when we don't know or we make mistakes, it causes us to feel small and weak. But masculinity isn't about inflating yourself or being strong all the time. To me, masculinity is embodying that process of learning and having experiences, of being in the uncertainty, not getting attached to what we gain on the other end of it. Which brings me to the second most influential teacher to me in shaping how I understand masculinity, who was very different from the first. Like, not so much in knowledge, but in personality. He wasn't necessarily someone that I wanted to emulate or to be like. To be honest, I don't even think that would be possible because our personalities couldn't be so much more different. He was like a deadhead, intellectual turned spiritual seeker. But what he had that I deeply, deeply admired was confidence in who he was. He understood exactly who he was, with all his strengths and all his quirkiness and all his flaws. He taught me that masculinity doesn't mean being perfect. It isn't a performance to get attention. It's just being unmistakably yourself and being comfortable in that space. Whereas we often associate peak manliness as being that cool kid on the block. The truth is, it's not. The third teacher who left a strong impact on me is someone who I admire for many of the same reasons as the others. He was always in the pursuit of knowledge. He stands strong in who he is. He inspires me deeply, and yet not someone who I necessarily would strive to be. But what he taught me about masculinity has shaped my understanding and who I am in a really profound way. He taught me that strength exists in vulnerability because through his highs and lows in life, through his successes and all of his failures, Through the decisions in his life that many would keep hidden in the closet, he was always completely honest. He was unafraid to show his mistakes, to show his weaknesses. He reminded me that although masculinity is often taught as toughness, as fearlessness, as confidence, masculinity is also weakness, and it's breaking down and it's getting back up, which, in my opinion, is also something that's a little bit misconstrued or misunderstood. Because what he showed me is that getting back up is not always just springing back to our feet. It's actually taking time on the ground, assessing what got us here, considering when and where and how to get back up better. There's courage in taking our time and being more deliberate. And I think more people could benefit from seeing masculinity in this way. Manliness isn't like Popeye popping a can of spinach. It's the patience to learn from our missteps. And finally, the last teacher who genuinely shaped masculinity for me is myself. And this is why. I've always taken in life the road less traveled, which is hard, but it's even more difficult when you don't love to be in the spotlight, because it means that you need to prove yourself and to stand out while not wanting to prove yourself or stand out. And masculinity is often rewarded that person who loves to be in the spotlight. But what I've learned from myself is that this is not always true. Masculinity can exist while being shy, while operating in the background, while not necessarily wanting to be the center of attention all the time. It may take longer to find success, it may take longer to be seen, but there's so much to learn and so many experiences to have and so much more time to develop the best, most honest version of yourself when you're not in a hurry. And to me, that's true masculinity. So what I've learned about being a dude is that masculinity is the pursuit of knowledge, of living life, of being yourself, of making mistakes confidently, not having answers, and being comfortable in your own skin, even when it means doing that from the shadows. And so when I look back on these 22 years spent practicing yoga, time spent studying yoga, time spent teaching yoga, and all that time in a female-dominated space, that's what yoga taught me about being a man, which may not sound like the version that we're sold, but it's definitely the one underneath it. If this resonated, don't forget to like and subscribe, share a comment. Let me know what masculinity means to you. And I look forward to seeing you in the very next video.